Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at this little black and white television. This is a perfectly ordinary set you might have in your living room. This might be a second set you'd give to a child, maybe to hook up to an old 8-bit computer. It's made by Panasonic, and the branding on the front is LTD, oddly enough. This happens to be Panasonic TR-1203T, that's the model number, and chassis is K01, and it was manufactured in April of 1979. As is usual on this channel, I don't know much about this set. In other words, I've never turned it on. It may be broken, and if it is, maybe that'll mean this is a bit of a repair video. And if it does work, then we're just going to be taking a look at this thing, so a little bit of a test and tour. As is extremely typical for sets of this era, this has simply RF input. So we have twin lead connection. I think for UHF, it's a little hard to read that. It might be VHF as well. And a standard bar telescoping antenna. Now, in case you're from a country with a different tuner setup than North America, UHF tuners, at least at this time, had channels 14 through 83. So this is a notched knob. You just turn it to set your channel. Typically you have some fine tuning, which seems to be pretty gummed up actually. It's this knob there, so you would tune this or turn this knob once the channel is set on the detent of the channel you want, tune that to do fine tuning. Now to activate the UHF tuner, the VHF tuner has channels 2 through 13. Yeah, I don't know what happened to channel 1. That's something that hasn't existed in North America in a long time, at least on broadcast TVs. But to access the UHF tuner, you set it to U, the U position, and then that switches this tuner into operation. Part of me wonders if originally channel 1 was there and they reallocated channel 1 to be the U or the cascade position to go to the UHF tuner. If you happen to know about that, yeah, comment down below because I'm kind of curious. We can see the LTD branding there. Normally LTD in English, of course, means limited. Not so sure there's much that's limited about this set because it's pretty run-of-the-mill. Below the tuners, there's a small speaker. It's probably just a little round jobby, although it might be oval. We have a knob for power and volume. So it's got a little on-off detent at the bottom. And then you just turn it on or turn it up to turn up the volume. Little earphone connector. And we have controls at the very bottom edge here for brightness and contrast. That's it for the front of the set. Just has a few scuffs. This thing was filthy when I got it. And I am noticing we have a little phosphor burn in the center of this set. That implies that when you turn this off, the picture shrinks down to a little dot, and it's actually burned a spot. Let me see if I can get the camera to resolve that. My camera does not have the best macro functionality, but there's a small black speck there. And if that does resolve, that is absolutely a phosphor burn, because if I rub my finger over it, I can see that it's behind the glass. It's not just a speck of dirt on the front side. Instead of the usual 70s wood grain, this actually has a light, well, or cream color plastic. And on the top, if I just tilt this over a little bit, there are a few lighter spots. So my assumption is this was a lighter cream color originally and has yellowed over time. And there was a lot more dirt and crap on the top of the set, and I cleaned it off, and that resulted in a few lighter spots. And the same thing over here, although I didn't really clean off that adhesive bit. I figured I'd stop cleaning this thing until I actually had a chance to test it. This particular set is made in Taiwan, and then down here we have the April 1979 badge along with the chassis number and the serial number sticker. It's cool those have not fallen off. I'm going to use a flashlight here to see some of the additional controls. Vertical hold, and that's actually exposed where you can turn that by hand. There are 3 holes that are labeled. So we have horizontal frequency, also known as horizontal hold, height, and vertical linearity. And you needed to use a little plastic tool, almost like the one I'm pointing with, to adjust these just through the back of the case. Yeah, I can feel there's something in there. Now in this video, I definitely want to test this thing out and see if this works, because then that'll sort of dictate where this video goes. I think before we turn it on randomly, like just plug it in and turn it on, I should take the back cover off. I am noticing that the little nub from the antenna is broken off, so it just makes extending it a lot more difficult. So yeah, let's get the back cover off. Let's inspect. I want to see what this looks like inside, just in case anything is extremely bad looking in there. And then, yeah, I will not just turn it on. Now, not having looked inside of this, and it's not like I've worked on that many black and white sets, it is going to be my assumption that this is not an isolated design, meaning it's a hot chassis. The reason why I guess that is it's not that heavy. This is obviously solid state. There's not going to be any tubes in here. I mean, I don't think there will be. I guess it's theoretically possible. 1979, I don't think it said solid state on the front, which was an indicator that it was only transistor based. But the set doesn't weigh that much. Therefore, I think it's all plastic. It's obviously got a PCB inside. And if it had a transformer and say the B+, which is the voltage the whole set runs off of, was around 12 to 16 volts, then this would be a good candidate to do a composite mod to say turn this into a computer monitor. But it's kind of light, so I don't think that's the case. If it's just a hot chassis, that means that it's using sort of a very simple dropper regulator type power supply. And that means that if you plug in the plug backwards and it is polarized, one of the slots is bigger than the other, then that could result in what is the ground inside here actually being at mains voltage. I won't be surprised if there's a connection from the tuners in the front of the set to these back terminals with some kind of like spade connectors that I'm going to have to try to get off. And indeed, it's just some spade connectors. That's free. Back cover, whoa, dropped a screw. There it is, dusty, but not much else to report. All right, let's try to get a lay of the land. First off, it's kind of gunky in here, as if someone had sprayed some contact cleaner in here at one point. One thing you can tell for sure is that this is not an isolated power supply design, meaning it does not use a transformer. Therefore, like I said, this is a hot chassis design. It's not appropriate to do a composite mod on a set like this. You really only can use it with RF. I mean, of course, you could hook this up with something like an isolation transformer, and then it would be fine. Generally, if you have a power supply inside that's an isolated design, it's got a transformer in there already, so it's galvanically isolated from mains to the circuitry that's in here. You might be wondering about the tuner connection. Well, this is like a metal terminal, and that how does that work? Well, it's because it's got a little isolation transformer thing going on right here on the RF connection that isolates this from the chassis of the set. So these connections don't become live, even if this plug is reversed. But the rest of this TV set is all plastic, including all the knobs on the front, the whole case, and that is to protect you against, that potential issue when the plug is reversed. And actually, while you're at it, don't open a set like this unless you know what you're doing and you know how to be safe, because of course, mains voltages can be lethal, not to mention you have high voltages from the high voltage power supply in here and all that kind of stuff. Okay, well, let's try to get a lay of the land. So this is the power supply. There is a fuse there. It looks like it's intact, I think. I don't know. We'll see in a second. There is a little transformer right down there. Let's see if I can get my little pokey tool to indicate that a little bit better. It might be hard to see, but it's just back there. But that's a speaker output transformer. I can see back there, they're potentiometers for brightness and contrast, and oddly enough, there are also footprint for them on the back of the board. Oh, camera's not quite right. There it is, the little footprint right there. So I think just it could be a different case that this board is installed, which might have the controls on the back. There's a small potentiometer here, and this was not exposed to the back of the set, or the cover that is. I think that's because this is the voltage regulator adjuster. So this adjusts the power supply, so the B+ voltage. That's the main voltage that the whole set runs off of. This would be to make that adjustment. Don't fiddle with that unless you know how to measure the B+ voltage and you know what it should be. If you have the service manual, it'll say it in there, but there's some stickers in here, and I don't think it necessarily says that anywhere in here. It doesn't typically, so I would never change that unlabeled potentiometer. The rest of these are labeled on the board, frequency and stuff is the ones we saw through the back of the case, so those are fine to touch. Now, as I said, it's all a bit gunky here, which is weird, and it just kind of makes me think that maybe at some point someone sprayed some contact cleaner in here, or maybe that was like at the factory they did that. I couldn't tell you exactly. It goes without saying that this set is entirely solid state. I mean, the vacuum, this is a big vacuum tube, so obviously that's not solid state. But the main electronics, entirely solid state. I do see another potentiometer over here. It says white level. So that's something to do with the brightness control, I guess. Could be like the same thing as the G2 control or screen control on newer, more modern sets. These capacitors are made by Panasonic, which is typical because it's a Panasonic set. They are potentially problematic, especially the purple ones. The purple ones have a tendency to kind of leak, but nothing looks like it's obviously bulged or out of sorts. So I don't see any problems really on this set. Everything looks fine, just dirty. I do see another potentiometer right here, and on the PCB it says aux brightness. So we have another screen control. Things are understandably dirty, and it looks like this set is definitely used when it comes to like the amount of kind of fuzz and dust around the high voltage anode cap. These labels have seen better days. The CRT in here is made by Panasonic, and there's a sticker here that tells you which CRT should be in the set. It does match what we see there. 310 GAB4, 31 centimeters, aka 12 inch or thereabouts. If you're thinking about using this set as a CRT donor for something else, looks like this does use normal mounting ears. So it's actually got a metal ear that has a little bolt through it that attaches it to the front case. And those ears are towards the back of the band. I tried to draw a better diagram of what I'm explaining. So the little hashed area is the implosion band. That's a metal band that goes all around the front of the CRT. Of course, this is the face you would look at. There's the connector on the back of the CRT with the deflection yoke. Well, these things, these tabs that are on the implosion band, those are the mounting tabs. And sometimes they could be front or back. And in this set, they're towards the back. And that has a lot to do with the compatibility. If you're going to try to put this CRT into another display that uses the same 31 centimeter CRTs, usually the connector on the back, especially because this thing is from 79, those are pretty interchangeable between all the different types of CRTs around this time, mid 80s, going backwards to sort of the later 70s. You could kind of swap these around. Generally, it works as long as those tabs are compatible, and of course the size. This set uses integrated circuits. So we have at least 3 ICs I can see, large one there and some smaller ones. Most likely they're used for things like horizontal vertical deflection, generating the signals that is, and taking the intermediate frequency that is coming from the tuner. This is like the actual received signal, and pulling out the various parts of the signal like the sound, the video signal, stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if like one of these small ones maybe is for sound, maybe it has something to do with amplification, something like that. If we look over on this side, of course, that's the flyback transformer. It is not cracked or damaged in any way. It looks fine. And it even says horizontal, nicely labeled on the board. It's nicely labeled all the different sections. Nice that Panasonic could do that. But there is our horizontal output transistor right there and a little transformer, very typical design. There'll be a small drive transistor of some kind that drives that transformer that then drives this horizontal output transistor. And then that is what drives through the yoke and the flyback to actually generate the high voltage and the sweep and whatnot. And then for vertical, there'll probably be another section on the board somewhere that might be labeled. I don't see it specifically. It's a bit dirty, but we have a part AN295N that's an integrated circuit that might drive the vertical directly. Okay, well inside things look okay. So I'm gonna hold the board. It's not connected to power or anything like that. Just put the power switch back on there. Oh, it was actually already on. So we'll just leave that on with the volume turned down. And for powering this set up, I'm gonna use this isolation transformer just to create a better and more safe environment for myself. In case I accidentally touch something in here, I don't want to get a shock, a mains voltage shock. This isolation transformer does not have a power switch on it, so I like to plug it into something like a power strip that does have a power switch, so I can turn this on and off. And then we're going to take the set connection, which is a little bent up, plug that into the isolation transformer like so. And let's see what happens. I have this switch turned on, volume is turned all the way down, but there might be a little bit of sound. And I flip this power switch over here that I have my left hand on. The set should turn on, and hopefully it doesn't let the magic smoke out. All right, we're ready? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Okay. It's high voltage, but no image or very dark image. Okay, I fired up the app Spectroid. I'm sure if you watch me work on CRTs, you've seen me fiddle with this app a bunch of times. And we're getting about 15.1 kilohertz, so it's a little bit low, but there's no signal going into the set, so it's working. It should be generating an image, and you know what? Looks like it is. It's just very, very, very dark. Now I found that it's kind of normal for, especially these old black and white sets, if they've been used a lot, to, when they initially turn on, to be extremely dark. And just running them, they kind of wake up over time. But I must say that this doesn't quite look good. Let's change the channel here. Like the picture seems to be jumping around in a way that doesn't look quite correct. Do the brightness and contrast knobs do anything on the front? That was contrast and nothing's really happening. And brightness, Same thing. So this TV is definitely faulty. There is some kind of fault happening on here. We can see retrace lines are just starting to become visible. And I would expect to see snow. Let's see if there's audio. It's scratchy. Okay, one thing that's interesting is the picture's brightening up, obviously, but it sounds like there's a bit of hum. Uh-oh. That was weird. Why did the picture disappear? Let's turn this off. Well, it doesn't turn off to a dot like I thought it would. Did we just lose the image entirely? Oh, I thought I saw a little dot there too appear. Well, what happened to our image? I only turned it off for a second. It should still be generating an image, but now we have nothing. Okay, I've killed the power to it. What I want to see is if anything is unusually hot in here. Now the power is off. I'll unplug it just to be safe. I want to touch these capacitors in the power supply section. Obviously the fuse is good because the set turned on. So I'm just going to finger some of these caps. I just want to see if any of them are hot. Nope. None are even warm. Of course, we have to be careful because there's potentially high voltage right now. I didn't measure it, but we can figure that it's there. Because we heard the sound on the phone, 15.1 kilohertz or so, that tells you that almost certainly there's going to be high voltage being generated. If you didn't hear that 15.1 kilohertz at all, it wasn't being picked up, and we didn't feel any little bit of static on the front of the set, then obviously there's a chance there's no high voltage. But we saw some brightness, some raster on there. It's not doing it now, but it was. So it's a good chance that this is still charged up potentially. So just be careful about the high voltage anode section. Now, of course, these resistors are going to be hot because that was dropping all that voltage. But yeah, these caps are fine. They don't feel bad at all. If they have high ESR and they're like shorted internally, they could be getting very hot, and we could let the smoke out of one of them, but that didn't seem to be the case. Let's plug this back in. I think I'm just gonna turn the set back on and let's see if we get that raster again. Don't need to hear the audio. We definitely still have the peak. So 15 kilohertz is there. Oh, it's still there. It's just really, really dim. Oh, there we go. Wow, that took a long time for it to come in. Wow, this looks absolutely terrible. Just terrible. It's very jumpy. The image is pretty dark and it looks quite blurry. I don't remember seeing a focus control anywhere on this thing. I'm going to try fiddling with some of those controls. Let me just find the right tool for that. Oh, what happened there? Okay. Do we have bad joints on here? Yeah, I think we do. Let's turn that off and back on. Let's see if it behaves similarly. It's very strange that when you turn it off and then back on, we don't get that. Oh. Yeah, okay. Kind of screams that there's a problem there, huh? All right, one thing I am curious about on this is this connector on the back. Power is off, by the way. I'm just giving this a little inspection for cracked solder joints. Looks totally fine. I'd be concerned if around the connector itself, that's this, that connects to the CRT, if that had a problem, or maybe the little aux brightness potentiometer, that looks fine as well. So let's just get this reconnected. And let's see if that made any difference. Just sort of taking it off and on had maybe cleared off some oxide off those pins. Okay, when I banged it, kind of came back to life. Okay, Yep, I'm going to need to really look for more bad solder joints, and we will have to look on the underside of that PCB. That'll be the very first thing we need to do, and maybe that'll fix some of these other issues as well. We could have bad connections that are causing us not to get snow and just having those retrace lines, you know, all sorts of things like that. So let's get this thing out of here. Now, when it comes to trying to identify cracked joints, sometimes it helps to get something like a flashlight and shine at an angle and look as close as you can to the various connections, and then see if you have any that have little cracks running through them. And sometimes a little magnifier loupe or magnifying glass can help. I'm actually not really seeing everything or anything bad. The soldering on here looks great. Nothing looks bad at all. Now with these single-sided boards, you can also have cracks just from physical damage, dropping, things like that. And who knows how this thing was treated. So you kind of have to look for any kind of hidden cracks that might be there as well. And obviously they can manifest themselves similarly like a bad solder joint where I was, you know, tapping it and it was coming in and out. There is another possibility though, that we have a connection problem inside the CRT itself, and tapping on the side is, say, connecting the cathode. Maybe there's a bad connection on the cathode and tapping it is causing that to come in and out. That's harder to identify, although what I could have done is hook this and power back up and then tap lightly on the glass here and see if that changes anything. Because obviously, you know, banging on the board could cause the image to come in and out. But if we tap gently here and it causes it to go in and out, well, that's sort of telling us the problem might be there. So I am going to just spend a moment going over this board and trying to identify any bad joints and reflow them. All right, well, I did not see a single bad solder joint on the bottom, none. I reflowed the joints for the flyback because this is a heavy component that typically can cause issues, but otherwise no visible problem. Something obviously is wrong. So with that said, I think the only thing left to do is plug this in again and poke around the board with it turned on. Of course, this is a Danger Will Robinson mode if you don't know what you're doing. Poke around the board and see if I can identify where that problem is coming from. Like I said, could be the CRT, so we need to poke on the glass, poke on the board, you know, the usual stuff like that. I'm not yet going to plug any kind of input into the tuner. That will be for later because we should have regular snow on the set and we're not. So clearly there's something wrong there. What doesn't seem to disappear when we had that dark image was the horizontal scan rate. So high voltage is probably just fine while it's doing that. Okay, so I'm using the good old trick mirror so I can poke the board on the back here. It is still plugged into the isolation transformer for safety. And let's turn it on. Okay, set should be on. And we should start seeing an image momentarily, some kind of static or something. Now, by the way, yeah, looks the same. So I'm going to use, for pokey, this plastic stick here. And let's start poking around on the board here. I need to adjust this so I can see it a little bit better. Well, now it's just working. Let's power it off and on to get it to misbehave like it was doing before. Aha. Kind of came back, didn't it? When I poked down here by the flyback. Oh, there was a weird noise coming out of the set just there. And it's not the volume. It was sort of a high-pitched kind of sound. I don't know, it's hard to describe. But I shut off the power to the isolation transformer just because I was a bit weirded out by that. But the picture did sort of come back when I poked around the flyback transformer area. It's quite possible this flyback transformer generates the 12 volts that is for the heater. So it could be that the heater isn't working when I turn it back on, and poking here maybe makes it work again. I don't know, let's try again. Now it's been off for a little while, so it's going to take a second to come back. I think it should be back by now. Why are you so unhappy? I turned the power off. All right, so far inconclusive about getting it to come back. Turn it on again. I'll try poking on this side of the board. I don't know. Is it my poking that makes it come back, or does it come back on its own? I was going to try again without poking. Let's see how long it takes to come back. It shouldn't do this. It should, look, it came back kind of the same amount of time on its own. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently wrap. I know you can't really see it, but I'm going to wrap on the neck of the CRT a little bit here, just with the plastic end of the handle. That's not really having any effect. So we've just lost all image entirely here. Huh. It seems like there's some kind of snow happening on here. I wonder if the set is just so absolutely worn out, the CRT is just dead. And what we were seeing before was a problem with the cathode drive, but it was just saturating the cathode. It was like you turn up the screen voltage all the way, and that's why we could see those retrace lines. And now that fault sort of cleared itself, however that happened. Maybe there was a little short or something, and me banging around sort of fixed it. The set's off right now, by the way. And now we're getting snow. I might need to just feed a signal into this thing so we can actually see if we're getting anything at all. All right, for the RF output, I'll be using the VG91. This is an agile test pattern generator, meaning it can generate any RF channel, pretty much all the cable TV, all the North American channels. You could just change the channel, output level, test patterns, and I have a matching transformer going directly into the tuner, so 300 ohms from 75 ohms, which is what comes out of this. It's set for channel 3 right now. Let's turn on the television and see what we see. Don't really see anything. Okay, we're getting that problem again. Let's poke at the board here. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? Oh. Oh. Uh-oh. I think it's the CRT. Did you see that when I bumped the CRT? Oh no. All right, the CRT is junk, I think. Let's change the test pattern, but I do see a test pattern. It looks like garbage. Oh yeah, this is the CRT itself is bad. Oh no. What a bummer. So I'm just using a Sharpie here. And when I tap the CRT neck, now the picture, if you could just make it out, it's kind of doing a little bit of fluttering. It makes a bit of a noise, like something on the board is making a noise while it's doing that. Let's just hit the board again. I think it's the CRT, I really do. See how we're getting like blooming issues. I think there's some shorts happening in the CRT itself. Now the picture is absolute hot garbage. What we should be looking at, by the way, is a crosshatch pattern. And yeah, it's not really looking that good. Okay, you can just make out the crosshatch pattern there. Or can you? I can just make it out. So circle square. Wow, the blooming. Oh, it's just so bad. Color bars. You just can't make anything out on this set. Look how the geometry changes. Let me try to get the camera position where you could actually see it a little bit. Can you actually make that out at all? Yeah, you can just make it out. Look how the geometry size changes so dramatically. That is wild. I'm going to try to adjust this brightness control on the neck board. Oh, wow. Massive blooming. I think everything is just turned up to max, basically, on this. The funny thing is, adjusting the linearity control there. And what's this one here? I'm adjusting the height. Well, I'm going to try to adjust it. There's the height control. So we have great deflection. Horizontal vertical looks good. This is horizontal hold or horizontal frequency, but we're locked in. So sync decoding's working as well. Vertical hold, this control is the one that's stuck through the back. That's working as it should. So it's locked on. There's a really good range of a lock there. And if I fiddle with these front controls, I mean, that's max on whatever that one was. And okay, so this one, if I turn it up too much, starts overloading the power supply or something. See how it goes bloomy? Starts kind of blipping in and out a little bit. So I'm going to use the old Sharpie and bump the back of the CRT again. Oh yeah, as soon as I hit it there, I think we have some shorts like heater to cathode or grid to cathode shorts, and it kind of comes and goes when I tap on it. I'm going to power the set off and on, and let's see if we have the issue when it comes back. Oh no, it looks like it comes back right away. Now we're not having that same problem, but again, I think it's the CRT itself is just toast. Yeah, it comes back relatively quickly. So off. I'm also expecting a dot in the middle, and I don't get it. So just so you can see what I'm doing, if I hit the neck, it's kind of gotten better. See, there it happened. But it looks like everything on the board, I'm going to say, is working perfectly. And our main problem is the CRT is dead. And if I hit this a specific way, just a certain way like that, you notice how it kind of goes white, just like it was doing initially when we first powered this on, and then the picture kind of goes back to normal. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the CRT tester because I do have it. We can plug it into this and we can see if it registers those shorts, especially when I bump on the CRT with the pen or screwdriver or whatever. Let's see, it's set for 12 volts, which is what this is. Everything is turned down. I have it set to the shorts position, which are these lights. Let's turn it on. So we're not seeing anything right now, but I think that's because it's not shorted. It was only shorted when it had that, oh, there we go. G1 to, well, cathode. So because this is a monochrome CRT, it only is hooked up to the red. So that's the cathode and G1. So there's our short. I'm going to take this little screwdriver here and I'm going to bang on the CRT. Let's see if we can get that to clear out. No, it's not clearing. What we can try to do is blow the shorts out. I think there's a way to do that. Remove shorts right here. I've never actually used this because I've never had a set that had shorts, but this one does. So let's try that function. Remove shorts, and we push this button. So it removes the G1, that's a grid 1 to cathode short, which is exactly the short we had specifically. That's what this function does. I don't think it removes necessarily like the G2 short, but we have a G1 to cathode short. Okay, here we go. I don't know, I'm just gonna push it. Okay, I don't know. The lights are still on, so that didn't do anything. Okay, I tried again, and the lights are still on. So that doesn't really, I don't know this tester that well. I don't think that button works that well. All right, well, let me bang on it a little bit more with the Sharpie. See how they kind of come and go? Yeah, the CRT is unhappy. Why don't we check for emissions? So to do that, let's see. First we got to say cutoff. I don't know what the voltages should be. So 300 volts. And there is cutoff on this thing. So we just adjust it so the little meter is at the cutoff line. Emission test. I mean, we have emissions. Actual emissions on this thing. It's just the shorts inside the neck that make this thing not work well. So I'm going to bang on the CRT one more time. So they kind of come and go. You see that? They just came on for a second. And I think what was happening, the reason why we had the retrace lines is because for cathode drive, that's what actually is drawing the image. When it's at ground, that's maximum brightness. And to pull it away from ground, usually in the negative rail, that actually kind of turns off the cathode. So that makes a dark screen. So with the short, it was probably pulling cathode, when it's shorted that is, to ground or near ground. And that's why it was just like blasting with a, well, it was not a bright image, but it could have been a bright image with the retrace lines because the cathode drive circuit, which turns off the cathode during retrace, which is why you don't see those retrace lines, none of that was working. It was just shorted. I think what was happening is as that short is happening inside the CRT, it really doesn't appreciate it. The drive electronics does not appreciate it, which is why I was hearing kind of weird noises and the image was fluttering and flickering. I think that was all related. Okay, well, what I have sort of figured out by using this tester is when you have shorts, and they're not really clearing when we try that clear function, at least with this tester. There's no help in this CRT. It's possible with a swap, this TV could be made to work again, but is there really any point? Because let's be honest, this is a pretty ordinary television set, and the fact that it's so worn out tells us that it almost certainly was just super well used. So whoever owned this thing just used the heck out of it. And I guess just over time, the CRT has got that short developed inside. I don't really know what causes that to happen, but I guess it just did. And yes, it's possible that swapping the CRT could result in this television working, but is there really a point? I'm not sure. And the reason why I say that is because I have other black and white TVs that work perfectly, have a beautiful picture without any image problems, and there's nothing particularly interesting about this TV. It is just plain ordinary, which if it worked, is fine. But is there any real reason to kind of fix this? Is this special in any way? No, it's not. And as I've talked about plenty of times before on the channel, CRTs are consumable items. They wear out over time just with use, and they can develop issues like this. They can go gassy, where that means the air goes inside of them, so the vacuum is reduced. That causes them to not work and eventually will totally destroy them. But issues like this, where there's something wrong on the neck, I mean, that's just a typical issue as well. And therefore, I pretty much decided that this set, as you can see, it's already been disassembled, is going to be recycling material. I'll be keeping the PCB out of this TV as just a spare parts board, and probably the deflection yoke as well, because you never know, I might run into something like a computer monitor that might use the same yoke or some other part from this board. So it's good to just sort of toss it into my spare parts bin. But unfortunately, this CRT, well, due to that shorted cathode to grid, is unfortunately junk. And the rest of this TV is not special enough to save, and that's why you just can't save them all. Now, I suppose there is one quick experiment we can do just to see if, well, how well this chassis is working. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a spare CRT. I'm pretty sure I have a 9-inch one floating around, and that's going to work fine on here. We can fire this up with the 9-inch CRT just sort of hanging out the back here. See if it actually produces a good image. I'm going to wager that there's nothing wrong with this board at all, and this probably produces a perfectly good image on a CRT that's not damaged. So let me get that set up. Okay, we have a 9-inch Macintosh CRT, and it's a pretty worn out one, actually. I wrote the emissive stuff on here, and it has no cutoff. So it's not going to produce a very good image because this is kind of a junk CRT as well. But it doesn't have any shorts. And while it's 9-inch, I think it should work fine in this chassis or with this board designed for a 12-inch. I'm actually just going to move the ground lead over to that corner. Just got to make sure it's hooked up. High voltage is connected. Okay, here we go. Are we ready? 3, 2, 1. It's on. All right, so we're not getting any kind of image, but I can tell it's running. So I'm going to fiddle with some controls a little bit. Oh, just to make sure the set is running. 3 kilohertz tone is coming through the RF, so RF is working. So turn that off. Okay, actually, you know, I think the problem is, and this is not going to work, I think this particular CRT requires grid voltage around 500 volts. And based on the settings on the CRT tester, that other one was, I think, around 280 volts. And that results in no image. When you try to use a CRT that needs a higher G2 voltage than the chassis can provide, then you just get nothing. All right, well, that's going to be it for this video. It was kind of circling the drain for a while, wasn't it? Unfortunately, that's how it goes sometimes. You know, I start these videos, I don't really know where I'm going to go with them. It's just like the TV I've never tested, so let's see what happens. Well, it turned out I was able to demonstrate what a grid to cathode short looks like. You get that kind of messed up blooming, at least in the case of this television, and hitting the neck of the CRT kind of made it come and go. And it just looked like garbage, unfortunately, no matter what happened. And as I mentioned, there's really no way to fix that except for swapping the CRT with another one that is compatible with the chassis. Clearly, the CRT in this TV is never going to work again. So it's the end of the line for this little Panasonic LTD. It's going to get recycled, at least the plastic cases here in the tuners. I don't need those. I will be keeping that board. I will be recycling the CRT and the rest of the case. And there you go. That's how it goes sometimes. A perfectly ordinary TV, hopefully was well loved by its owner and used a lot. My hands are dirty from all the soot that was on it, so I think that was the case. And sometimes you just can't save them all. So if you like this video, all the thumbs up YouTube stuff, thanks to my members, thanks to my subscribers, thanks to everyone for all the support. And that's going to be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.